Every anime has its problems, and Naruto isn't any exception to that, but there's something that really gets on my nerves. One of the most exaggerated issues within the series is the way Madara dies. People act as if Madara was so invincible that author Kishimoto had to write him out of the story. For those who don't know, I'm specifically talking about the events of Madara's downfall, starting from when Black Zetsu stabs Madara in the back, all the way up to his death at the conclusion of a fourth Great Ninja War. During that time, it's revealed that Black Zetsu was manipulating Madara from the shadows in order to exact his scheme to resurrect Kaguya. This turn of events must have really annoyed the majority of the fanbase, because of the unpredictable nature of Zetsu's betrayal on the fan favourite like Madara. This element of secrecy surrounding Zetsu's true motives felt like an arsepull, and it also altered the trajectory of Madara's character arc in the eyes of many. But it's my job here today to take you on a journey to explore other interpretation in the hopes of changing your mind if you hated the way Madara went out. To unravel the intricacies of Madara's vulnerability, we first have to take a deep look at the depths of his psychology. In episode 367, called Hashirama Madara, we get insight into Madara's backstory. As a kid, Madara's life took a fateful turn when he crossed paths with a kid called Hashirama Senju. The two boys quickly forged a friendly rivalry that extended beyond the battlefield. They shared moments of sparring and stone skipping together at the riverbanks. When Hashirama beat Madara used the excuse he doesn't like the fact that people are behind him and it puts him off. Keeping this in mind and putting it to the test, while Madara is, as you do, taking a piss, Hashirama took the opportunity to stealthily prank Madara off guard from behind. To Madara's unexpected shock, he nearly shat himself, and Hashirama then joked that catching Madara off guard from behind was his only weakness, a joke that would unironically prove itself true several times in the future. While their childhood encounter was playful, it also sowed the seeds for Madara's vulnerability. Madara embodies the ethos of a warrior. He was raised and harbored unwavering pride and honor, so the very idea of being caught off guard, from behind especially, was completely alien to him, as he came from a very honorable era where everybody thought exactly like him, well, nearly everybody. This deeply rooted upbringing was a result of the Uchiha clan's code of facing opponents head-on, looking their enemies right in the eye. The mindset made the Uchiha tough, but at the same time vulnerable to surprise attacks. For example, Madara's brother Izuna was killed by Tobirama's surprise attack, and this reinforced Madara's hatred towards them even more. Madara's humanoid Susanoo also gives us some insight into his weakness and psyche. The Susanoo's unique dual faces, much like the Roman god Janus, whose two faces represent the ability to perceive the past and future, but not the present in front of him. Just like Janus, despite Madara's unbelievable perceptiveness with his Sharingan, he could never see what was right in front of him. That was the irony. Initially, my interpretation was that when Madara took his brother's eyes to achieve the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, it caused a fusion of the two brothers Susanoo. However, this feels like a stretch. The Susanoo is a result of his Mangekyo Sharingan, which are the eyes of a heart, and they materialize the user's deepest desires. So Madara's human Susanoo may be two-faced, without a back, because it symbolizes his distrust of others, meaning only he has his own back. Madara as a character embodies self-reliance, so in essence, the two-faced nature of Madara's Susanoo could actually be linked to a deeper narrative, showcasing that the Uchiha Susanoo says something about them as individuals. We know Shisui has a drill as a Susanoo, so I wonder what that's about. Don't worry, I wouldn't overthink it. Hopefully you're not thinking what I'm thinking, I might just be really weird. Later in episode 369, My True Dream, the complex history between Madara and Hashirama is revealed. Madara was kind of beefing Hashirama over their conflicting ideals. Ultimately, he chose to cut ties with Konoha, and this led to a series of insane events, with Madara launching multiple attacks on Konoha. Madara's final fight with Hashirama took place near a riverbank, which would later become the Valley of the End. He then took control over the Nine Tails, and used it in his clash against Hashirama, which tore the very land itself apart as it demolished mountains and rivers, pushing them both to the brink of exhaustion. Their fight was a call back to them sparring when they were kids and stone skipping along the riverbanks, but now it's happening on a much bigger scale. This became a very iconic battle that later led to the Valley of the End having their statues carved there on the spot. In the end, believing that he had won, Madara couldn't have been more wrong. When he thought Hashirama was beat, it turned out to be a trick. A wood clone then took Madara's focus, as Hashirama seized the opportunity to exploit Madara's weakness and stab him from behind, implying that he always knew about his weakness, but he never really exploited it until he had to. This was, in Madara's eyes, the ultimate betrayal, both literally and metaphorically, since his best friend had driven a metaphorical dagger into Madara. Well, it's not really metaphorical since it's literally a blade going through his heart. Exploiting Madara's weakness from behind was strategic, I'm not gonna lie, but it's also pretty dishonorable for somebody like Hashirama, who you wouldn't expect to do something like that. Hashirama's betrayal stood as a testament to Konoha's multi-faced nature and delved into the intricacies of pride, honor, and the art of war, especially during the feudal era. However, Madara's story wasn't over yet. He miraculously survived death, which is only possible through a forbidden Uchiha jutsu called the Izanagi. The Izanagi is different to regular genjutsu, as it allows the user to cheat death by blending the boundaries of illusion and reality together. While standard genjutsu just manipulates the target's senses and creates false experiences in the mind, the Izanagi physically changes illusions into reality. The Izanagi physically changes reality into illusion. Basically, the user gains this temporary control over the fabric of existence by determining what's real and what's not, as long as the Izanagi is active for a few minutes. Of course, this is somewhat limited too, as it's not full-out reality warping. Madara used the Izanagi to nullify his death and any injuries that he had to create the ideal outcome for him to deceive Hashirama. He skillfully orchestrated and faked his own death. Madara's plan was to then withdraw into the shadows and begin planning his revenge in Konoha. As the curtains fell on Madara's supposed death, his name became legend and alone represented so much power it could start world wars. Hashirama's blade pierced Madara's heart, yet the Uchiha mastermind was able to pull off one other thing before this moment. He stole some of Hashirama's flesh during that chaotic fight, which I guess wouldn't have been too hard as they were trading hands and making each other bleed. It's even implied that Hashirama had to regenerate, so he probably got the worst end of it. So using Hashirama's flesh, he implanted it where his heart used to be. The infusion of Hashirama's cells into Madara's body gave him new abilities like regeneration and the mastery of Sage Mode. As cool as that is, even more impressively, as the descendants of the legendary Indra and Ashura, the combined DNA manifested the chakra of a sage of six paths, Hagoromo. So in his twilight years, Madara found himself wielding the power of the Rinnegan. Madara's newfound ocular power changed his motivations. He prolonged his life using the Geto Mazo, and then gave his Rinnegan to Nagato for safekeeping, so he could one day use him to revive him using Rebirth. Of course, this didn't go completely to plan. First, he needed an apprentice, and luckily he came across a young Obito, who he manipulated in order to exact the infinite Tsukuyomi plan, a grand design to cast the entire world into an unbreakable genjutsu under his control so he can rid humanity of violence. Over time, Madara's pessimism influenced his beliefs and led him to believe that the cycle of hatred is inescapable in real life. This skepticism about human nature meant that he didn't trust anybody to be capable of learning from their mistakes. This definitely links to the fact that he has a thing for getting betrayed constantly, so considers reality worthless, as he doesn't trust anybody, not even his best friend Hashirama. This commitment to create a new world was all that mattered to him, so he materialized what he thought to be his own will, known as Black Zetsu. Madara's motivations weren't completely driven by revenge though. In fact, his time in Konoha had shown him the blueprint for his vision for the future of humanity. His actions, even if they were kind of evil, were guided by the belief that he was acting for the best interest of humanity as a whole, striving to reshape the world into an idyllic utopia. After his reanimation and later his full revival, using Rebirth, Madara became the Tento Jinchuriki and plunged the entire world into the infinite Tsukuyomi like he had planned to do. Team 7 is then on the ropes and Madara declares himself the world's savior by replacing hell with heaven. And that's when Black Zetsu stabs him in the back. The irony being that this is exactly where Hashirama had stabbed him originally, and exactly where he had implanted Hashirama's cells into himself. Black Zetsu reveals that he was never Madara's will, but instead Kaguya's, and Madara was a part of his elaborate 1,000-year plan to revive her, forcing Madara to start absorbing chakra from those trapped in the infinite Tsukuyomi, transforming him into Kaguya. Many people didn't like this, but it kinda does make sense that Madara would have been beaten by his only established weakness, which was over-trusting. That aside, should Madara have been the final villain? I know this gets people talking as well. It was already established and foreshadowed by Hagoromo that Kaguya was the originator of chakra, and that Madara was trying to obtain her power. I don't want to go too much into it as I plan to do a completely separate video on whether Kaguya was necessary for the plot or not, but I will say that Kaguya was definitely needed for the direction that the Naruto series wanted to take with Kishimoto, who is a science fiction fan. Kaguya was meant to be the one who created the energy source that humans had abused and corrupted to create ninja warfare. She was a representation of the raw power and destruction that Naruto had to overcome to create a less violent world, in which people can work together. Naruto was seeking world peace, so it makes sense that his beef and quarrels were more so with Kaguya, who's literally a solar system destroying nuke, over Madara, who's nothing but a misguided and abused creation of ninja wars. Naruto and Sasuke eventually sealed Kaguya in her own dimension, along with Black Zetsu, at which point she spits out a dying Madara, who is summoned back to the original universe alongside everybody else. Madara is going to die as a result of losing his Six Paths powers of immortality, and uses the remaining time to speak with Hashirama. First, he admits that his own dream for peace has now died, while Hashirama's lives on through Naruto, which makes Hashirama a better man than him. However, Hashirama replies that they're still friends despite everything. Hashirama tells them neither of them had to achieve their goals, and rather they should have let the future generation do that for them, admitting to Hashirama he never liked anybody standing behind him. Hashirama says that they should both share drinks in the afterlife as war buddies, and Madara agrees before dying. Hashirama never cared about which one of them was right, rather that they had the same end goal in the first place. Right before Madara died, for some reason he had the Sharingan activated, suggesting that he still had the chakra to at least use it Izanagi, meaning he could have technically revived himself. And another thing that bugs people out is the fact that the Sage 6 Path claims that Madara was a Jinchuriki, so now that he's lost this power, he can't be saved. But that isn't exactly true, is it? Because we know for a fact that he and his brother, Hamura, both survived the extraction of a 10-tail somehow, but failed to mention exactly how. Personally, I think Hagoromo knew that Madara was finally at peace, and he didn't want to live, as he had finally accepted that he'd lost. He wished to die with Hashirama acknowledging him, and his plan's ultimate failure made him see its errors, breaking free of his curse of hatred and admitting superiority to Hashirama's methods of peace. He and Hashirama were able to settle their differences and similarities and die as friends. While Madara's death isn't exactly perfect, it's not as bad as many people make it out to be. Zetsu's betrayal was consistent with Madara's weakness of over-trusting people and not covering his back. Could Zetsu's origin and purpose have been better foreshadowed maybe? Sure. It was meant to be a shocking revelation that Zetsu wasn't on Madara's side, but to be fair, the betrayal did feel completely out of character for him, so maybe the criticism should have been targeted rather at Zetsu instead of Madara. In the end, Madara was somewhat redeemed, but not excused, so don't get that twisted, because I don't think he was a good person either, rather a corrupted one. Zetsu abused Madara's hatred of a ninja world, and was a main problem in the series, so as a will of Kaguya, it made sense that she'd end up becoming the final antagonist of a series over Madara, whereas I don't condone Madara's actions. He was a product of a greater evil, and his intentions were always for the greater good of mankind. Hashirama and Madara were both leftovers of a war, and both took different directions in order to achieve world peace. Of course, Hashirama was more grown up, and tried to fix the war's issues through politics and talking, creating alliances. In a way, Madara's direction was far more childish, and that's probably because he is more childish than Hashirama. Tobirama stated that the Uchiha's power is fueled by emotion, and unfortunately they're a very emotional clan, which explains their power. Madara was the strongest of the clan, so Tobirama hypothesized this was probably because he was the most emotional of the clan, and his love for his brother was unrivaled. So it makes sense that he was prone to overreacting and being bipolar. Combined with his power, that's a dangerous combination right there. In the end, Madara's narrative concluded with the fact that he was able to love others and accept death, no matter how hard he tried to outrun it. In his numerous attempts to achieve immortality, this was his destiny. He wished to share a drink with his best friend and eternal rival Hashirama in the afterlife, and both left the world of the living to start a new chapter in life in the Pure Land, concluding Madara's story. If you enjoyed this analysis and you'd like to see more content like this, please don't forget to show your support by liking and subscribing to the channel. It'd also be appreciated if you could explore the other videos available on my channel, ranging from discussions about Madara's full potential and what that would have looked like if he hadn't been backstabbed by Black Zetsu, or if you're not really into that, whether Itachi's a psychopath or not. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Until then, take care, peace out.